Welcome to Bonehead. And this week, as we've said before, Chad, this is our silent episode, and Chad is going to act out all of our picks with shadow puppets.
Before we record,
We are
and I know
recording.
technically we're recording, does this mean I don't have to talk the whole episode? Because that would be
By the way,
I don't think you would actually think that's awesome.
because nobody wants to hear me talk anyway.
That's not
that's
true.
not true.
That's not true.
mean,
It's
I
just no
don't-
one right now.
I don't have any
But later-
data of the people that won that. But now, in all fairness, Chad, I'm the one that has the voice for silent film.
Oh,
And he
to-
also has a face for silent film.
Face for radio,
I
To-
just couldn't say it.
voice for silent film. No, dude, I know what I am. I'm not a good looking man. I'm working on a glow up.
You are a handsome woman.
Well, I mean, compared to I don't know Lon Chaney Sr. today, he's dead. He's decayed, probably not looking great. I'm probably a little bit better than he is.
Let's dig his ass
So-
up and find out. Chad.
Oh, see, that's great. You will, and then he'll still be better looking than me. And what am I supposed to do?
so I want to reach out to our listeners real quick.
Don't actually
touch
touch them
them.
though, because
Yeah.
we ain't doing this.
So to our tens of listeners in the comments, I know we don't have a lot of comments.
No, that anime episode did not go over. We have yet to get a comment on that, have we? Oh well.
Oh, really? Because I think Barbara said she liked it. She really wanted more of those, and I said, well, I think that was a lot of work, and Chad, James did all the work.
But I just nobody made any comments on it, at least on YouTube. Now I haven't checked SoundCloud. I only check SoundCloud about once a month.
Well, I will be looking for a second. You go ahead
So
and talk.
anyway, what I would like our listeners to do in comments, I have asked people that I know this for years, and every time I get weird looks, but I cannot be the only one who suffers from this. Listeners, dear listeners, those people I love who support us,
They
do
don't give
any
us
of
any-
you sneeze
Unlike our families.
when you, our listeners, when you sneeze? Please tell me I'm not the only one whose wrist hurts. Please put something in the comments. Thank you.
Huh.
Have you tried praying on that? It doesn't have to be to any particular thing or
I
higher
swear
power.
to God,
just-
every time I sneeze, since I was as long as I can remember, my wrist hurts so bad that I can't do anything for like a solid 2 or 3 minutes.
have you had your muscles and bones checked for carpal tunnels? That seems
Oh,
like
he doesn't.
something.
I have
Bonitis.
mentioned this to my doctor, and she's like, I don't know. That's new to me. I've never heard that before in my life.
You
I would
weird
get a
fucking-
second, third, fourth, fifth opinion until I found somebody that would be like, no, that's caused by demons in your blood. What should you do for it, Joe?
The cocaine. You have demons in your blood. You should do cocaine. That's right. It's one of my favorite. James pulled out probably my favorite meme of all time. You have nothing would be better than being an old timey doctor. You have demons in your blood, and you should do cocaine for it.
Yep. I mean, in all fairness, it's because Chad, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's either
I-
cocaine or put mercury in your penis. That's what the
Yeah.
old timey cures were.
I can
I,
put cocaine in my penis, but probably not mercury. That's
I
a
mean,
big
you could,
planet.
you just don't want to.
I don't know that I can get that planted all the way here.
Well, I mean, by the way, but that actually brings up a point. Speaking of old timey things, did I transition that right?
Sure.
All right, you want to tell them what we're talking about?
Silent movies.
Yes, movies that
Did
don't
you
talk-
you literally cut out when you went to talk?
No, I heard him.
Oh, well then it's over here.
Mm.
Let me I am having issues with mine then. Let me click some stuff and you all keep talking.
James.
Sorry, I was drinking. I'm sorry. I'm not drinking. I'm having one of these lovely clear American. That's generic for clearly Canadians, but it is. This is what it is. It's good though if you
I
ever have
believe
one.
you.
I mean, if they want to sponsor us, it's a Walmart brand. I don't think Walmart's going to sponsor us.
which probably
have-
means you're drinking straight lead. Good job.
Listen, somebody had to, since they don't use that mercury for medicine anymore, they had to do something with it.
So back to your point.
Paint chips had to go somewhere, right, James?
Back to your all's
Big
point.
lead's going to make some money.
We are doing silent films. Now, I know a lot of our listeners probably don't watch a lot of silent films.
Yeah.
The youth today.
And to be honest with you, the majority of people don't either because history if you people don't realize this, there are silent films we watch, but the truth is there are a lot of silent films that we'll never get to watch because of proper film, the way films were stored. 75% of silent films are lost to history.
Well, Silver Nitrate, right? There's actually
Yeah.
a novel that came out called Silver Nitrate, and it's a horror novel. I haven't got to read it yet. I've heard it's good. I forget who it's by.
There's a whole Quentin Tarantino film based on this.
Yeah, but because Silver Nitrate
Yeah.
is it's actually the same thing that's true with comic books. Actually comic books for quite some longer. They were their own worst enemies.
Yeah.
Right? Because comic books were printed on very acidic paper because they weren't meant to last forever. So as they touch the pages touch, that's why old comic books the color fades and all that stuff. And so the media was not originally made to last the way we want it to
No
today.
one would know, because at the time no one thought in the long term that nobody would care to watch these films.
Yeah. Or
Right,
read
and
those old comics.
And if that's a story throughout media, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
nobody kept the kinescopes either.
Well,
Right.
we're
We
lucky
have
we
all
have
those great shows that people just have memories of.
we-
Yeah,
I was
like
gonna say-
Doctor Who, like think about Doctor Who. A lot of episodes were recorded over.
Well, in Monty Python, we barely got to keep Monty Python's Flying Circus, right?
Yep.
Because that was saved barely.
Yeah, the BBC just did not want to keep it. But we're going over this, but most of the silent films are lost.
Yeah, we'll
Just
never
gone.
see them.
I forget what the number, but it's astronomical.
It's 75% of the silent films that were made.
I thought it was 75 to 80%. Thank you, Chad. I'm not being sorry. I really thought it was that. I thank you for telling me, because I thought it's a huge shit ton of silent films that are just gone. And not only are they gone, the people who made them and then the people who may have watched them or showed them again, they're gone too. Because we're
But
talking about
sorry, I just wanted to do an interjection. But every blue moon,
Yeah.
they'll find a copy. Like there was a copy of one of them, and I'm forgetting which one. I can't remember if it's on my list or not. But they found a copy in a barn in Paris that had been, just stored in a barn by itself, but it was the complete film. And they then went back and they actually found, because it hadn't been played, because it had been stored in what was effectively a dry barn.
Yeah.
It actually held up great, and they used it as a scan. And it's actually they had a surviving copy of the film that had been screened, but it had all the scratches and everything in it. And they found this one, and they were like, "Oh, this is now the definitive copy."
Yeah.
Because it was in such good shape. So I wanted to say that because every blue moon you'll hear, and this goes for even more recent stuff than silent film, right? I think Quentin Tarantino has the old. Why am I blanking? He had the entire that him and Robert Rodriguez did a movie that used the title Grindhouse. The Grindhouse films have missing reels, the old ones.
Yeah.
Well, they would cut out pieces, and they'd cut out pieces at the drive-ins where they would go, and making a print of a movie was expensive. So when you made a low-budget film like that, you just went to drive-in, or you would go. Basically, you were on a road show with your movie, and that's how you made your money.
Yep.
And you'd only have one or two prints. And that print would be wore the hell out after 6 months to a year, 2 years.
I'm not prepared for this, but so the facts are, I'm not going to have all the facts. So for example, names or what have you, but there's a famous haunting that took place in Australia in the early 1920s. And they actually made a silent film on this haunting that actually starred the people who actually were being haunted and one famous Australian actor at the time. Nobody knew this movie. The only reason we knew this movie existed is because somebody happened to find an old poster of it in an old movie theater. Everybody knew the story of the haunting. There's recorded stuff of the haunting. Nobody knew a movie ever existed only because somebody happened to be renovating a movie theater, found the poster of the actual poster with the people from the actual haunting and the actor on it. That's how there are no records of silent films of that era. So we have no idea what was kept and what wasn't. I think isn't there a famous movie of Cleopatra
that's gone.
That's gone.
Yeah, there's several. There's several of those that are just gone. Now, we gave you a little bit of the history because it's important if you're a cinephile, if you're a film geek, I don't care, whatever handle you want to give yourself. You're probably listening to this show because you're a huge ass geek nerd, whatever you want to call yourself. And it's important that if you haven't seen it, and this is something I'm going to diss myself. There's a couple of things that I am like. There's tons of things I'm riddled with flaws, but one of the things I should have done better, especially as a younger man, as much as I loved movies, and movies were such an important part of my life, and I guess they still are, is that I should know more about art, visual art as well, because it's all
Well,
visual art,
well, I
and
think
you
And not
should
be such a
study what.
snob.
What'd
Bendy.
you say?
Nothing. The dog's talking bad about you.
And
That
it's all
dog.
visual art. So if you're watching something, you go, well, there's old and there's silent. Yeah, but everything there's nothing really new. These are and watch some of these, the invention, because there wasn't dialogue. You had to keep it short. The sentences short in between with the cards.
Right.
It was a visual way of telling a movie. And we've lost that with a lot of people. As much as I love Kevin Smith and Tarantino, it's not the same.
Well, and I was going to say, I think you brought up an important point because even the term motion picture
Sure.
was the idea that the early silent films were a train pulls into a station. And it was things you could walk and see in your day-to-day life if you lived near a train station. But the amazing part was it was a picture that moved.
By the way, that's one thing I've never looked up. Like, for example, the whole thing about people running out of their houses during the radio broadcast of War of the Worlds. That's proven mostly false.
I don't think it's proven mostly false. It did happen. It's just was blown out of proportion.
Yeah, it was rarer than
it's not
than
as
it happened,
bad as
but
people
not,
made it. So, but like James
pockets,
mentioned, like one of the original movies was just literally a train running past the screen.
Yeah.
But one of the stories about that is people would literally be watching the movie come and duck and run because they thought the train was going to hit them. That has to be false.
Well, no, there are some examples of it, and there are some examples of it. And actually, I'm going to talk about one of them
because people don't see in black and white.
But Chad, in all fairness,
colorblind people do, and I'm tired of you being.
They don't see in black and white. They see in lighter. They see in shape lighter.
Are you
shades.
colorblind? You don't know.
How do you know I'm not?
Because your dog told me.
I mean, I ain't gonna call it the dog. No, but by the way, though, no, actually, though, Chad, here's my counter to that because there are some documentations of it. But how many times have you seen something on screen that you know is false and it's made you flinch?
Nothing.
Here,
I'm a man.
Well, you know what? I have testicles, and I jumped in The Descent. I'm claustrophobic. That was the worst thing. And that thing came out, and I'm already kind of inside tunnels, and I jumped.
I'll be honest.
I know
and don't ask Joe about me jumping like 3 times during Romulus because that didn't happen.
I also, dude.
That's not the scariest movie we've seen.
I know, but I just told James I never jump at movies.
I saw you intentionally try to dodge the Care Bear stare in Care Bear Movie 2. So I know you dodged
with the cousins.
Yeah.
So, Care Bear cousins. And I remember the villain's name, Darkheart.
He was terrifying.
It's a little boy, as I recall. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he has by the way, if y'all haven't
I always preferred the Care Bear cousins more than the Care Bears.
If you haven't watched it on Shudder, if you haven't watched it on Shudder, what is it? It's not called The Best Of or whatever, but it's their documentary they're leading up to Halloween with. They do an episode every couple weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
If you watch the first episode, oddly enough, because the first episode is dedicated to the best tropes. I was
By the way, we still haven't gotten into silent films. It's awesome.
But we should. I was like, why didn't we do this episode? And one of the best tropes is cursed books, which of course Evil Dead comes up. But then they immediately go to, Care Bears 2, the boy with the evil book.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember the book. I just remember the little boy. I don't remember the Care Bears movie. When I was a kid, I watched the Care Bears movie 2 for some reason over. It's probably because there was an evil book. There was a little boy who was evil. And the
Care Bears movie 2 was dark as hell.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, by the way,
I'm once again not being an asshole. It's just always in my head that
I don't get me wrong. I haven't seen it since I was a lot younger, but I remember it being dark.
Apropos of
You're
this
masturbating.
Just like
conversation,
those incestuous robbers from the Chipmunks movie.
And I just want to
Ap-
say, I said masturbation, and the next word out of his mouth was incest.
apropos, which is you both terrible people. Apropos though of
That's
this
not true.
conversation,
I'm not
and
masturbating to
and
his
I'm glad
incest.
that occasionally people say that they enjoy our banter before we get into the topic because here we are. But apropos of this conversation, so the Minecraft trailer came out,
I saw
and
that.
one of the I don't know who it was, but somebody it may have been a religious group on Twitter or something. Anyway, but they posted, "Oh, this is aimed at 6-year-old kids," and the girl says, "What a tool bag" and stuff like that. And people immediately took that, especially horror movie fans, going, "Oh, does that offend you? Here's the opening of the Rats of Nim. Here's the opening of
Secret of Nim.
The Secret of Nim. Here's the book, by the way. I think it's called The Rats of Nim, right?
Probably.
The An American Tale, where it's the pulgrim, where they're burning down, and then it shows the mice running out after the humans are running away before they get killed, and it was just so funny because it was like, man, yeah, like, and all it was people going, oh, let us show you cartoons that were horrifying when we were younger, that nobody complained about. Like my parents were like, no, go watch your Nim movie. Oh, the little boy mouse is dying and his mother just needs to find a cure and her husband is dead. Go watch that. That seems like a fun kids movie.
Do you know Places in the Heart is a remake of The Secret of Nim?
So I do
Why
want
why don't we make an animated Lorenzo's Oil?
I don't know.
God.
Was that too obscure? Did I break something?
No, he broke us.
No, I'm just thinking of all the horrible things I could say.
I want to before we actually talk
Sure.
about our films, I want to bitch about Google.
I'm sure as they sit in their piles of money in their high castles. But yes, go ahead.
I did something I normally don't do. I did Google. Oh, I thought you were wearing a Christmas hat for a second.
I have one.
I know you do. You wear it every year.
And I never wash it.
It's never not funny.
It's never not funny.
Because I was looking up some information on the movies I was picking. Do you know what one of the and I looked up silent films, and of course they break them out by category. Do you know what one of the movies listed under silent dramas is?
No.
Now, I'm pretty sure that this movie, which if you said, Chad, could you give me a list, like breakdown, give me your list of, top 20 films.
Yeah.
This movie would definitely be in that list of top 20 films. Last time I checked, Sunset Boulevard, not a silent film.
No, she talks all the way through it. Is it because she was a silent star?
Yeah,
That's probably what it is.
The Google algorithm says silent. This must be included.
And then picks that out, yeah.
And then the right next to it, guys, Chaplin. Not the Chaplin films. Robert Downey Jr.'s Chaplin.
He didn't speak during that movie.
I'd say no. If you, Chad, I watched the special edition of it. Now, some people said I hit the mute button, but now I watched the special edition where he don't talk at all. It looks like he does, but he don't. He don't do that.
Anyway,
he does not do that.
All right, who's the first pick? You want me to go?
No, I'll go. I'll go first.
No,
I'm not letting you do what you did last time.
I didn't do it to you on purpose. I mean, I did, but I just didn't tell anybody I did it to you on purpose.
If you all burst out into you didn't have to love me, but you did, I'm going to have to leave.
I don't
honestly, guys.
And I thank you.
My first one's too much on the nose, and that's why I decided to go first. And I'm sorry I have to do this. But honestly, I have to pick Nosferatu.
I don't think we have to talk about it. We have to talk about Murnau.
Yeah, it is. When you talk about silent films, and you mentioned this briefly before on another segment we did, on a smaller segment we did for our friends at Good Movie Monday, horror movies work so well in the silent film genre.
They just work. John Carpenter's horror stories have been with us since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
Since cavemen were around a fire, the evil's out there or the evil's in here. There's two stories.
But there's just something particularly with the silent film era that just is so appealing with horror films. It's just because of the creepiness, the creeping horror,
The
that
visuals.
the visuals, the fact that you don't have to hear something for something to hurt you. And that's particularly true with Nosferatu, um, which was directed by F.W. Murnau. And of course, oh, what doing?
What is it? Are you okay?
Max Schreck.
Max
Schreck.
Schreck. I could have told you actually. Yeah,
I know, but I refuse to seek help on this because I know this stuff. My brain's just freezing. You all, I am to our listeners, I'm dealing with a pretty bad illness that I've been fighting for 2 weeks, so my brain is just not there.
Bonitis.
Yeah. So just so you know, F.W. Murnau could not get the rights to do actual Bram Stoker's Dracula. So what he did is he did his own take on it by doing Nosferatu. And in a lot of ways, I honestly think he did a far superior job than in
No,
because
you
if you had
didn't. I said, "Oh no, you didn't."
I did. I just love this film. It's just so particular creepy. The way that he changes the colors on the lenses to represent night and day. The way Max Schreck just creeps around with his long fingers and the shadowing. Everything about this movie is so beautiful, and I'm so glad we got to keep it. It didn't get lost. I just cannot talk about how amazing this film is. And it did, when you talk about silent films, it was one of the first introductions I had because, and honestly, it's the way I got introduced to it is through sheer luck. I mean, I didn't get to see it on TV. It was a bootleg VHS copy that I had that my friend gave me. And I was like, what is this? And then throughout the years, people have like gifted me, like you all have seen these, like those cheap, like
400 films for $2.
Exactly. Yeah. I've gotten like 3 copies of those, and Nosferatu's always on them. Mm-hmm. So I have like 3 copies of Nosferatu.
Just like James always gives me shit about my 14 copies of The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
Unless you watch the end credits where they forgot they named it The Brain That Wouldn't Die in the first credits, and it becomes The Head That Wouldn't Die in the end credits. It's a terrible movie, Joe. They forgot their own title. Terrible.
And you also love it just because of the fact that I love it because, you know, with this one, unlike Bram Stoker's, with Nosferatu, he brings the plague with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it just shows like it's just so great. And you see the people marking the doors and the people carrying the graves through the empty village. All the visuals are stunning with this one. But F.W. Murnau did such an amazing job.
Well, I'll go ahead.
I want to add a quick thing because it also led to, through the kindness of St. Cage, Nicolas Cage served as a producer of a film that looks at the very fictional making of that movie, Shadow of the Vampire.
But there's not really a lot known about Max Schreck.
Max Schreck
he was so mysterious.
That is true.
So if you've never seen Shadow of the Vampire, and by the way, to my fellow Nicolas Cage fan, Nicolas Cage actually was going to play Max Schreck, but when William Dafoe said, "I'd like that role," Nicolas Cage said, "Yeah, you probably better."
And he did
in that role. He nails it. If you've never seen Shadow of the Vampire, but the other reason you should watch Shadow of the Vampire is one thing that they took great pains to do is at the start of the film they show Murnau, who is played by
is it Murnau? Am I saying Murnau like
Murnau,
the wine?
I don't know if it's Murnau or Murnau, but it's played by
Malkovich. John Malkovich plays him. And what I found fascinating, I saw this at the Kentucky. I saw it when it was released theatrical. I loved it I own it on DVD. I bought it when it first came out. That's why I don't have it on Blu-ray. I bought it on when it first came out, which DVD was the best at the time. But it's fascinating because it shows him making a silent film. And of course, the director just talked because there wasn't anything picking up your voice. So it's like, now you do this, now you do this. And then it was also fascinating because Murnau is saying, you know, I'm going to be compared to Eisenstein. I'm going to be compared to, and he's naming all these other silent film directors that it's just really well done to show the environment of what it was to be a silent film director. And he even talks in that about, he goes, well, Stoker's widow won't let me do this, won't let me do that. So I've got to make it my own. And it's really, if you've never seen Nosferatu, Chad's absolutely right. Watch Nosferatu first. And I agree, by the way, the plague element of that actually makes the mythology make more sense, because if there's no plague, if there's nothing else, you're going to be like, wait a second, 14 people disappeared near that castle. But if there's a plague, you're going to be more worried about, I got to stay in the house. I'm not going to get involved.
And by the way, just for those people who might don't like the silence and the black and white and the weird colors, I would implore you to watch this version. Don't go watch Werner Herzog's version of Nosferatu the Vampire. It's okay.
Which is funny because there was another film.
Don't get me wrong, I like it.
There was another film called Vampire, by the way, that followed.
Right. But I still say Werner Herzog's version loses something in the translation.
What you need to do, like all
also
good things.
The final scene, I think, is a little lackluster in my opinion.
Watch the original first, watch Shadow of Vampire, then watch Herzog. Because you should always give Herzog a shot.
Also, too, if you look what they did if you look what Shrek did with Nosferatu in the silent version, and what Klinsky did as being able to talk, you can see how well Shrek did, how amazing Shrek did. It's
so I didn't mean to add on to your thing, but I just wanted to say Shadow
Kinski. Of the Vampire. Did I say Klinsky?
Yeah, you did. But
I'm sorry, Kinski. God bless it.
But now you should totally watch the original Nosferatu. You should check out Shadow of a Vampire because of just the way it shows how silent films were made.
And then go and watch Herzog, because Herzog, you watch all of Herzog's films, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, and by the way, if you can just
even the ones, even the ones that aren't great or interesting.
And by the way, if you follow that up with crap, Chad, I'm breaking my brain. Hold on.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Do you want to come back to you?
No, if you tell me that Strozak is not good, because Strozak is my favorite Werner Herzog film.
Actually, I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, Joe, you okay. To our listeners and to Joe Lewis, my dear friend, one of my two best friends in the entire world.
Who's the other one?
The other one on this call.
Like a really shitty list.
Get on Tubi and watch Strozak. It's so good.
I've seen part. I just don't think I've actually ever seen it from like beginning to end.
I love it. I truly do. It's my favorite Herzog film. So anyway, who goes next?
I'll go next because I have a big one that I want to go ahead and get out of the way. The only big one I have. And it's back to what Chad was talking about. It's like,
I don't know. That schnoz is pretty.
Thank you. Leave my skis low. Now, back to what I was saying. It's tough because the really, really popular ones are the ones who survive. But if we don't talk about much.
Is it Hanging Tough?
If we don't talk about Metropolis and Fritz Lang, then we're probably not doing our jobs.
That was going to be on my list too, but I figured one of you was going to do it.
I actually hadn't seen it till, I don't know, I probably didn't watch it till my 20s or 30s.
Same here.
And
it was recommended to me by Clark Kent. That's the Metropolis joke. Thank you, Superman fans.
That was for you. Joe James.
It's based on the book by Theo von Harbou. Supposedly screenplay of
those damn Germans. They did something right, didn't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, we could get into Goebbels and the whole about using the movie.
Oh no! What? No!
You're talking about German. No, I'm talking about German cinema and how they used it for propaganda. They've always
Propaganda.
been
No, I mean
fantastic filmmakers.
film. I
Yes.
mean, but no, Joe's right. They took their great gifts in filmmaking and
Yes.
as and used
Okay,
it for
I
you
don't know
scared
where
me
you
'cause
were
I
going
thought
with
no,
that.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else entirely, and you scared me. I don't
Why
know
would I
why.
do that? I've
I don't
never
know,
done
Joe.
that.
Yeah.
I've never
I'll be
done that.
honest, the day Joe actually does that is when you'll slowly see me reach up and log out because
Yeah, I was getting ready to do
given
this.
Why do you
given
all keep saying my name with it when we were talking about cinema when I never even said it?
no, I
Oh,
didn't say you did say. I said if you
but
ever go that far,
Metropolis. Jesus.
Sorry.
Jeez. German film, Fritz Lang. Problem with Fritz Lang, he's another one that was trying to flee the fucking Nazis, which these
Yeah.
bastards are trying to connect me to. But he was trying to flee the fucking Nazis, and he never quite. I'm trying to think. He didn't flourish in the studio system like he did in Europe. He just didn't, where the director was a auteur, and in the studio system in America, not as much.
well,
Some people were able to adapt and were able to get their voice through. Fritz Lang's never, it just Fritz Lang's. Fritz Lang was never able to just quite accomplish that. But you should know who his name is. James, what were you going to say?
well, I was going to say, you saying that made me think of John. We've quoted John Carpenter a lot tonight, but John Carpenter has that line, right? In France, I'm an artist,
In
and
France, and no, in France, I'm on a tour. In England, I'm a horror director. In America, I'm a bum.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that it's very interesting to me now because I think about how much effort goes into. I think it's Iron Man 2. They shot new scenes for just for the China release, right?
Yeah.
Just for the release in China, and that's what how studios address it now. But of course, back in the day, something could be huge in America and it be well, whatever other places,
But
and vice
man,
versa.
one thing you can say about Fritz though, that man could rock a monocle.
Moving right along.
Did
So
you
if
seen
do,
him?
do,
He
do.
walked. He rocked a monocle. That's all I'm saying.
back to Metropolis. It's 153 minutes. There's been several different versions. Back to what James was talking about, where they find different versions, more complete, more than that over the years. Metropolis is just set in the future. It's a dystopian film, of course. And it's about Freder, the wealthy son. I'm going to read some of this, sorry, just so I know. City of the son of the city master, and Maria, a saintly figure to the workers to overcome the vast gulf separating the classes in their city and bring the workers together with John Fedderson, the city master. Is so yeah. You talk about those damn liberals making all that Hollywood propaganda. Can you imagine a movie made today with that kind of plot where it's not even hidden,
Yeah.
where it's
Well,
not even subtext? It's the text.
yeah,
If the
yeah. I
text is
mean,
about how the workers are being exploited. The special effects in this movie, I'm not going to go into the special. Oh my God, it still looks good. And it's all barely held together, all handmade, paper mache, different camera tricks. It in this movie cost an absolute effing fortune when it was made, by the way. It made 21 million at the box of 21 euro. It cost 5.3. Can you imagine how much money that was back then? I was trying to look
Oh
it up and I
no.
never did figure it out.
But James, are you going to bring up any other Fritz Lang movies?
I don't think I have any more on my
No.
list. No.
I just want to say if Joe is bringing up Metropolis, the other one you should definitely look up. People, if you're following our recommendations, it's Metropolis followed by M.
So, Chad, truthfully, if I had to pick one to watch tomorrow, it would be M
M.
because, but I didn't put it on here because I just thought I had three picks.
You have to talk about Metropolis just because of the spectacle of it.
Now, to get back to what these bastards were trying to hang on me earlier, let me read a little bit of my last paragraph to bring it all
Oh God, he
back
fired on
towards
his
it.
manifesto.
No,
Nazi
Jesus Christ.
propagandists, Nazi propagandist
Nappies? What's a nappy?
Joseph Goebbels
Did Joe
was
go? Did Joe go Avatar on us?
well, who cares? They're fucking Nazis and call them whatever I want. Was impressed with the film's message of social justice. Are you listening to this? In a 1928 speech, he said, "The political bourgeois
Bourgeois.
about to leave the stage of history. In its place, advance the oppressed producers of the head and the hand, the forces of labor to begin their historical mission." Shortly after the Nazis came to power, Goebbels told Lang that on the basis of their seeing Metropolis together years before, Hitler had said he wanted Delane to make Nazi films.
Hmm.
See?
Oh, I was just giving you a hard time. Jeez. Some people are so
It's
sensitive.
fascinating
right?
to me, but it's German cinema. And in fact, so much so, it is so important about German silent cinema that Tarantino talks about it in the whole damn third act of what movie? Inglourious Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll get chewed out. I've been chewed out.
Yeah.
The second time we've mentioned Inglourious Bastards in this episode.
Because it explains things very eloquently that is just easier to understand if you're just listening to us. Inglourious Bastards, it is a history lesson. Don't get me wrong, that's not how World War II ended.
No.
Maybe it'd have been cool if it had have ended that way. But here we are. James, who's next?
Yes,
James?
James.
I'm going to talk about one that I think is really important. It's alluded to a lot, but I'm going to talk about because it really impacted a lot of other filmmakers, and that would be The Great Train Robbery.
Yeah.
If you've
That
never
has
seen
the shot with a pistol, right?
That's the end. Yes.
Yeah.
If you've never seen The Great Train Robbery,
Yeah, I have to. And just so you know, for our fans, Michael Crichton, the writer of Jurassic Park,
I knew he was going to do
traveled
this.
back in time to write this novel just so they could make this movie.
By the way, his version's not bad. I enjoy the Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland. But
I actually enjoyed the book because I actually my teenage years the only two authors I read were Stephen King and Michael Crichton. So go ahead, James.
I was reading Dostoevsky.
No, you
I
weren't.
didn't understand a word of it.
I was actually. I
reading it.
was. I read it translated. I don't speak. But
Yeah,
to live
so
it,
see, you
to
weren't
live
reading
is to suffer.
Dostoevsky.
I can't say
You
why.
were reading some guy who just told you what you thought he was writing.
Hold on. Let me go ahead. I will speak James to James. Why don't you try reading them instead of burning them?
Dude, I wouldn't burn a book I disagreed with. I just can't burn books.
Heard a lot
anyway,
of people you disagree with, but we shouldn't get into that here, I suppose.
Joe, those were obviously witches. And you could tell they were witches by how much they denied being witches.
You could tell they were witches, but the horns, did you see the horns, Joe? Sure, James, I saw the horns.
You include those anyway.
And I loved you in everything you've ever done. Remember that well. Keep going, Dr. Thomas.
Edwin S. Porter made, and I say made, he didn't direct, he did everything on this. He made it for the Edison Manufacturing Company. It was an Edison. Edison gets credit for making a lot of films. But Edwin S. Porter did it, 1903. It was completely silent. It gets credit for being one of the first, not the first. That doesn't work. Some people try to say it was the first narrative film. It's not. It's one of the first. There were other ones actually before this. But it's exactly what it says. It's a great train robbery. It follows a group of outlaws that it's 12 minutes long, 14 minutes long, depending on which cut you see. They break into the telegraph station that the train's going to come by. They make the telegraph guy flag, or they hit him in the head, and then they flag down the train. They get on the train and they rob the train. They rob all the people on the train. They make them get out. They kill one of the people on the train, and then the last third of the film is the chase. This was one of the first, if not the first, major chase film in an English production. Now, there had been some French silent films that did chases, but it's the posse chasing the outlaws that we'll see in a ton of other Westerns. What makes this most famous, though, it for many people, as they alluded to earlier, is at the end of the film, after the film's over, one of the outlaws, who is dead by the end of the movie, appears again on screen and shoots directly toward the audience. That had such a big impact on so many people. Even today, if you like the film Goodfellas, you know exactly where this is leading. Scorsese himself loved that scene so much that what happens at the end of Goodfellas? Joe Pesci's character, who is dead, appears at the end of the film and shoots. And it is almost frame for frame taken from The Great Train Robbery in 1903.
So I know what you were saying. I'll be completely honest. I really zoned out for half a second because, again, I'm not feeling too well. I really thought you said Joe Pesci was in the Great Train Robbery, and I'm like, wait, he did not just say that.
No,
He
the guy
was.
that the guy that plays the criminal that shoots in the screen, though, does have one of the best names of an actor for a Western ever.
What's that?
His actual name is Justice, and by the way, not Justice. It's Justus. Justice. Justice D. Barnes plays the criminal that shoots into the thing. He would continue to act, actually, I believe, until around 1941 he passed away. But to show you how little money they made, he is not, and this is a key point about silent films as well. They were actors, but these people weren't making that much money. It was like being a stage actor on tour, because his official job, according to the census, was he was a milkman.
So he's my dad.
Acted in a ton of. He could have been. There were so many people there. Anyway,
one to get by the goalie.
But anyway,
sheer volume.
Yo, how do we keep these prices low?
How does mom keep these prices low? Volume. But
it is an early narrative film. It's one of the first Westerns that we have, if not the first. It's definitely the first Western that has survived. And some people actually claim that it was actually based on cases that were influenced by, or that were the actual cases of, like, Butch Cassidy and some of those historic figures that later got very fictionalized films made about them as well. So The Great Train Robbery, I'm not the world's biggest Western fan. I like Westerns. I grew up with a man that constantly watched them. But I had to bring up The Great Train Robbery because it's such an important film, in that when you have Scorsese imitating you almost 100 years later, you probably did something right.
Yeah.
So Great Train Robbery was what came to
mind. So I picked this one. I didn't watch this movie I didn't watch this movie because I was a cinephile. I watched this movie because I'm a nerd.
Just sounds so weird to say cinephile. I said it earlier. It sounds weird. It just
It really does. I don't like saying it. I don't like calling myself a cinephile. I like just calling myself a movie.
He just likes pedo better.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's just childish. It's childish.
Childish. And when I say this,
British pronunciation.
When I say what the title of this movie, I think James will know why I picked it, and I don't know if Joe. I don't know if you'll know why I said it, why I pick it, but we'll see. The Man Who Laughs.
Oh, I know exactly why you picked it. It was on my list as an honorable mention.
Joe, do you know?
I don't know it.
So do you know the movie though?
No, I don't know it.
Okay, great. This is awesome. So The Man Who Laughs. I'm going to tell you about the movie, and then I'll tell you why I watched it. So The Man Who Laughs is directed by Paul Linney. It's another German film, by the way. It's based on a novel by Victor Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
Victor Hugo would also write other books, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, I know who Victor Hugo is, guys.
Books are like magazines, but bigger.
Without pictures, which also drives me crazy. And there's no pop-ups.
Yeah, for those who don't know...
we had to take away your pop-ups. You almost lost your eye.
For those of you who don't know Victor Hugo, he wrote a movie about a hunchback who was also known as The Miserable.
I would have let you buy with that because it would have worked.
Yeah, you kind of put two of them in there. But anyway, The Man Who Laughs. I'm looking it up now.
So it's about a noble who refuses to kiss the hand of a despotic King James in the 1690s. So that man is murdered, executed by this mean king, by this awful king, and his son is then horribly disfigured. And he is released upon the world, and his son grows up as a circus freak, basically. And he falls in love with this woman, but he hides his face behind this shawl. He never really shows his face, kind of Phantom of the Opera-esque. But he makes a living as a circus freak based on this awful smile that the king has given him. It's an amazingly shot film, visually stunning. The actor is Conrad Veidt, who went on to do a lot of other silent films. The reason I picked this film is the man who laughs, the main character, is the inspiration for the Joker.
Oh, okay.
The visual, if you look at the character of Gwynplaine, is that his? I can't remember the character's name, James. I think that's how you pronounce it, Gwynplaine.
L'Homme Cribbit is the original French title. Sorry.
Yeah, if you look at the character, Joe, I don't know if you've looked up the actual character. He is an exact replica of the Joker.
Gwynplaine. No, I'm actually looking up images. Yeah, there it is. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
But I don't know it till I see it.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie. If you haven't checked it out, you should really look it up. Just for the fact, especially if you're and that's why I watched it, is because I'm a comic book nerd. When I found out that the Joker was based on this film, I had to track it down and watch it. And I was amazed at how I'd never seen it before, because it is truly an amazing film. James, go ahead.
I was going to say, apropos of I want to
And
give
it's been done several times.
Conrad Veidt some credit here as well, because and I wrote a chapter on this for a book, but Conrad Veidt was among the population in Germany during the Weimar Republic that openly supported gay marriage and things like that. He really should be considered an icon for that, because he also was one of the first people that publicly cross-dressed. And so if you read the books, I would pitch my own chapter here, but I won't. Before the Deluge and Gay Berlin are two books that look at that scene of which he was a major part. So just putting him in context about how we think about the rise of the Nazis. Before that, there was a time when there was a great deal of equal marriage rights and things like that in the Weimar Republic, and he was a part of that driving force. Sorry.
Yeah, if you look him up on IMDb, this is one of the weirdest sentences I've ever seen in IMDb. He disliked heights, flying, the number 17, wearing ties, pudding, and interviews.
Then how do we know he doesn't like pudding? He had to say that in an interview. I don't want to talk to you, but I hate pudding.
But yeah, just for Conrad Veidt alone, he in a lot of ways there will never be another Lon Chaney.
But he looks a lot like Lon Chaney.
He puts Lon Chaney he makes Lon Chaney take a run for his money in this film. So I highly recommend The Man Who Laughs. Joe,
he looks like Lon Chaney in the movie to me.
It looks a little bit Phantom of the Opera-esque.
Yeah.
By the way, so he died relatively young, 50, I think. But do you know one of the reasons he quit? He eventually escapes Germany and ended up in England, and then eventually got offered some Hollywood roles, because I think his last role. Why am I blanking on what his last role was?
I don't know.
Above Suspicion.
Yeah, but one of the reasons
and Casablanca was the second to last one.
Yep, I was gonna say I knew he was in some big ones. But one of the reasons according to his
and Joe's favorite movie, Nazi Agent.
Well, and that was actually the reason he left. According to his
double Nazi spy.
According to his nephew, he got tired of being offered Nazi roles because he hated the Nazis for obvious reasons. And that's all Hollywood started to offer him was, oh, we need a Nazi. Will you do this? And he said no, and he walked away. And then he died.
I get that. All right.
They died? So, yeah, his heart stopped. We're just...
I said I get
smoking, because if you look at everything, he has a cigarette in his mouth.
So we would be remiss when my second pick is when we start trying to. I was listening to an interview the other day with Tarantino, and he was talking about the most famous people of all time. And I guess I knew this, but I didn't really know this, that Charlie Chaplin, there's not a movie star today that comes close to Chaplin.
No.
That as far as, and I don't mean that as in, it's not a judgment. It is, nobody comes close from the amount of fame that Charlie Chaplin had across the world.
And you got to think how hard it was to achieve that fame back then.
Yes. Ridiculously hard. It's not like he was on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and the
it's not
fact
like
that
theaters were the way they are now.
Yes.
and the fact that he was so well known that when he did a certain film that it set off a certain person halfway across the world.
Yes, the great dictator. So when we talk about this, and I kind of knew it, but I didn't know it, and it was a very good historical lesson for me. And there are certain people who are just like it's because his point was, well, yeah, the Beatles were big, yeah, but there's nobody that was probably bigger. And by the way, his other point was no one who also knew that they were bigger than Chaplin. Chaplin knew it too. He had the ego to go along with it, which is hard, right? If you are known by everyone in the world, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. So when we go to pick what our favorite movie is, I couldn't just pick one. So what I went with is The Kid.
Yeah.
Who was played by who?
Well, that's another Uncle Fester,
Yeah, Uncle Fester.
which led us to what law, James? Do you want to talk about it?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I
Yeah.
just I wanted to make sure because I love
Jackie Coogan.
Jackie Coogan was
Jackie Coogan played the kid. If you've never seen the kid's a 21 American silent comedy, and it's a drama, written, produced, starred. I mean, Chaplin did it all. And he's founding baby, adopted son, and sidekick. And it is. I watched it a few years ago as I was going through because I watched Modern Times and a few other things. It's still pretty good and heart-wrenching. That scene with him and Jackie where they're crying and reaching for each other, and
Mhm.
it's still pretty damn effective 100 years later for an audience, which is me. I know I'm a cynic sometimes, but it's still worked on me. I mean, I don't know that I quit. So Coogan was a child actor who was in vaudeville, and he was the first major child star of the movies. I didn't realize he was the first major child star.
I
Did
didn't
you all?
either. No, I didn't know that.
yeah, he beat Shirley Temple.
Yeah. So he
She
was
deserved it.
so he was so taken advantage of when it came to his money by his family that they actually put in laws that were named after him. And please correct me. I am not going back to look at my notes, but please correct me. The law is it called the Coogan Law?
I've heard it called Coogan's Law before, so I don't
To
know if that's the
protect
official.
child actors because they would take it, the parents had complete control, like you do if you have a child. And it was to protect them and to protect their money.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the SAG-AFTRA website, it is called Coogan Law.
Yeah.
But we still see echoes of that today, right? We saw Macaulay Culkin, the Jay North who played Dennis the Menace, had some experiences with that. I mean, there's all so it helped, but there's still we still see continuations of issues.
Here's the one with the pony part, though. So there's
And
two
there's
interesting.
also there's the the California Child Actors Bill. It's 50% of the earnings in a trust, and it's often called a Coogan account as well.
Yeah. So, and he would go on to play Uncle Fester in the Addams Family. But the other thing that's after production was completed in 1920, the film was caught up in a divorce. Can you imagine that? Charlie Chaplin getting a divorce?
No.
And he and his associate smuggled the raw negative to Salt Lake City and edited it in a room in a hotel in Utah because the movie was caught up in the divorce. To release the complete film and avoid it being part of his divorce proceedings, Chaplin showed First National executives a cut of the film. He used the screening to renegotiate his contract. Before releasing the film, Chaplin negotiated to receive an enhanced financial deal based on the success of the final film. This included 50% of the box office once First National's budget of $1.5 million had been reached, and full ownership returned to Chaplin after 5 years. He would eventually tinker with the movie. I didn't know this either. He actually went back and cut scenes out of it that he deemed too sentimental as he got older. I just
So he
didn't. And it
Lucas the
was,
film.
huh? Yeah,
He
he kind of
Lucas the
Lucas
film.
the film. Yeah, yeah. He held on to it till 1972. Philharmonic Hall with Chaplin in attendance. They finally did the original musical score and theatrical release, and it's the re-edited version of what it would have looked like at the world premiere. So I find all of that absolutely fascinating. There's 3 or 4 stories about it, but if you've not seen it, it still actually works. It's funny, it's also heartfelt, and it was just a huge movie. And we had to talk about Chaplin. And there was no way I was
That
going to be able to pick just one Chaplin movie. But if we're going to talk about silent films, just like we talked about Metropolis and Fritz Lang, we had to mention Chaplin.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up the one. I'm gonna bring up one of my honorable mentions, which you know which one I'm gonna bring up. That is my favorite Chaplin film.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I don't know what my favorite one
I
is.
have to. I know what my favorite is, just because I've watched it repeatedly. I can't stop watching it.
It's just that was the one. All
Yeah.
right. Who's next, James?
Yeah, can we pause for just a second?
Yo. And you were saying, James?
My second choice, I believe we're to second choices, right? I've got to talk. So we've talked a lot about horror, but
You better hope your wife doesn't hear this.
you leave my bronze medal alone. Oh,
Dude, when it comes to second choices, it isn't him who had that. It was his wife.
anyway, I'm her silver medal. Anyway, we've talked about horror, but I think one of the most influential science fiction films is also, and it's dated today. Of course, it's dated today, but you've got to talk about Trip to the Moon.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Joe, can you pronounce the director? George
I
Malaise?
Malay. Yeah, Malay.
Now, how come you asked Joe to pronounce it, not
Chad, will
moi?
you pronounce it? I don't know. I've only read it my entire life.
I'm not actually.
It's pronounced Franklin.
Oh, okay. Well, it's weird that it's spelled Meleiis.
You know who does a good job of pronouncing it? The movie Hugo,
Yep. I was gonna.
yeah.
Damn it. Yep.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
which we probably should have watched beforehand, which is a throwback to what? Silent movies.
So, Trip to the Moon is an early science fiction film. Again, some people want to argue it's the first one, and actually, I can prove that wrong.
Yeah.
But it also
it's just the only one that survived.
Actually, there's another one which I'm going to talk about briefly at the end of this. But
oh yeah, by the way, screw you for picking a French film.
It is about the plot to the film is there's a league of astronomers, a group of astronomers, and one of them says, "Hey, I found a way to go to the moon." And he picks 5 people. There's one guy that dissents, but he picks 5 people, and they go to the moon, and they encounter creatures on the moon, including Stellanites, is what they call the Moon Men.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really important about this film is not only is it not the first, but an early science fiction film, but it also was one of the first films to build animation into live action.
Right.
There's an animated scene in it. But they go to the moon, and then, of course, they encounter alien life, and they've got to figure out how to get home.
Yeah.
But it also has one of the most famous scenes of all time, which has been made fun of on The Simpsons, or not made fun of. It's been alluded to on The Simpsons. It's been alluded to on the Drew Carey Show. It's been alluded to everywhere. Anytime you see a moon that has something hit it in the eye, it's alluding to this film because the rocket ship hits the man in the moon, hits his eye, and gets embedded there. That's from this movie.
Yep.
So it's a huge cultural touchstone that people are still alluding to. And now people are alluding to things that alluded to it and don't seem to be aware of it in some cases, which is fascinating in of itself.
I'm trying to diagram your sentence that you just did.
Yeah.
You can't diagram a sentence. Dude, I taught English for a while and it's a lost art. I can do it, but it's not. Anyway, but I also wanted to share this because it goes to one of Chad Jennings's favorite conspiracy theory rants. It also proves what a huge jerk Thomas Alva Edison was.
Oh God, yeah. It's why we have Hollywood.
So when this was being made, George I'll just call him George Malaise, anyway. He was making this movie, and he knew it wouldn't be a big deal. It would make a little bit of money in France, but he knew the real audience for this was America. The problem was there was a certain individual that tended to have a lock on American film in, this time period in 1902, and it was the guy that owned the Thomas Edison company.
Yeah,
some guy named conveniently Thomas Edison. And he had his engineers had to process the film. And George Malay thought, okay, I'm going to make my money in America.
Mhm.
Edison's film technicians, as they developed the film, made copies without telling them. Edison premiered the film himself in America, and there was no copyright law for film at the time. Edison made a killing off of this work. George Millay went bankrupt.
Milliers. Milliers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Milliers.
Um,
Milliers.
okay.
I'm just
yes,
saying what YouTube's doing to me now.
I know
Milliers.
where you got it from.
Milliers.
Yes, thank you. He made no money off the American showings, and he was broke a few years later. It affected his productivity. He did go on to make other films, and he had made films before this, but it is I wanted to bring that up because that was also the trouble of silent film. It was, for lack of a better term, it's the Wild West. There were no laws yet. There was no,
Yeah.
and he had no recourse. It was no Edison.
Like them internets a few years ago.
I remember back when we called it the information superhighway, kids. Y'all remember that? I want to get on the information superhighway.
And that's seriously why we have Hollywood, because Edison had such a grasp on the copyrights for film that people who wanted to make films just moved so far across the country that they could make films that Edison couldn't get to him.
But I mean, it's amazing because I mean, now we would look at Edison and be like, "That's monopoly. We got to stop that." But obviously, that wasn't a thing.
Well, they don't really stop him now.
Once again, you're a conspiracy. But no, so if you've never seen it, again, it is one that's pretty well known because it's survived. There's multiple copies of it. It was an example of one. Matter of fact, actually, interestingly enough, have you, I'm going to sound like a bad skit. Have y'all seen this? You heard about this? This also, they found in Paris a copy that was completely hand colored. It was one of the first films that was also hand colored.
Colored, yeah.
And that was restored, I think in 2018. They found it in 2006, and they had to restore it frame by frame by frame. But so there was a colorized version from this time period, 1902, that has now been discovered and preserved, and you could purchase now.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I actually kind of prefer the black and white version because that color version looks bad.
Yeah, but it's if you're a history
Leave Ted Turner and his goddamn Crayolas alone.
I know, but that's honestly that's what the 1902 version looks like. But at the time,
yeah, it is.
But at the time, 1902, when you're watching something on a screen that's color, you're like, "Oh my god, what is this?"
That's what I mean. If you want the complete experience, watch both. I do agree with you though, Chad. Watch the black and white for the story to get the but for the importance of the history of film, I can imagine him showing up and being like, "Okay, I need you to color this frame by frame by frame."
Yeah.
And make sure you don't mess it up.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah. Trip to the Moon, also known as, and because I'm great at French, Le Voyage dans la Lune.
Is it repeating over and over in your speaker headphones right now?
No.
Milliers.
Okay, yes, Chad, we got it.
Final
I'm still going to call him George Miller. His name's George Miller now.
Final round. And by the way, Chad was right. Fury Road, I agree with him. I mean, not Fury Road.
Furiosa.
I almost said Holiday.
Interesting movie. Interesting movie.
That's all. Yep. No,
it's an interesting picture.
I haven't got to watch it yet, so I'll have to do.
It's not bad. Interesting picture. I don't know particularly how it got made, but it's an interesting picture. Chad.
Okay, guys. When we talk about silent films, when we talk about silent movies, you got to talk about a silent movie where the title of the movie is Silent Movie.
Now, technically, it does have one spoken part.
I'm aware.
Spoken by who, gentlemen?
Marcel Marceau.
And nobody now will know why the hell that's funny.
I know.
Nobody will explain.
But it's hilarious.
So, yeah, I will get into that. Guys, so for those who don't know, who hopefully listen to know, Silent Movie is a Mel Brooks film. It was his third film that he made. Well, fourth film, if you count 12 Chairs. No, for producers, fifth film.
It'd be fifth or sixth, yeah.
Yeah. I always don't count. For some reason, I count 12 chairs and forget to count the producers. I don't know why.
Because nobody's ever heard of the producers, Chad. My wife's favorite Mel Brooks work.
There's some days it's in my top 3. It is my top 3. Yeah.
What producers?
Yeah.
Guys,
My wife
seriously.
loves the
So,
musical.
let me ask you this: what is your favorite Mel Brooks film? Have we talked? Because Joe, I
Blazing
want to say
Saddles.
yours is Blazing Saddles. Joe, James, yours is Young Frankenstein, right?
Yeah, but well, yeah. I mean, it's not pure Mel Brooks, but yeah. If you're including Young Frankenstein in that list, yes, Young Frankenstein.
Well, it's a Mel Brooks film.
He did direct it. Mick
He
Strawn and I
directed
got
it.
in an argument about this because his is Young Frankenstein. He yelled at me for saying Blazing Saddles, but it's Blazing Saddles is a comfort movie to me. It makes me feel good. It can
Yeah.
it can I there's only probably less than 5 movies that can do that I've seen so many times.
Yeah, and I have a hard time, and that's where I have a hard time picking but silent movie has a special place in my heart. It really does. Like Blazing Saddles is comfort food. I love Young Frankenstein
I do
deeply. And it now has a special connection to me because it's the only Mel Brooks film that my youngest daughter sits down and watches with me
Well,
and laughs at and enjoys.
well, I want to say just as a caveat, the reason I say if you include Young Frankenstein is he didn't write it.
Well, I know, but
He did rewrite it. He did write it with him.
But
He
I
wasn't
always
the one
look
that came up with the story.
he wasn't the one who wrote
I
Blazing
always
Saddles
look at the
either.
viewpoint of the writer. I like to look at the viewpoint of the writer, and I just want to say that's why I said if you count
He is
Young
one
Frankenstein.
of 2 writers on that movie, and I will say he's one of many writers on Blazing Saddles.
Saddles, yes.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's why I said, let me get caveat that. Like the producers, he wrote and directed. That is a Mel Brooks.
So that's the
pure
only
film.
Mel Brooks film there is.
Technically, he wrote and directed all of them, but yeah, I get where he was one of the he was at least in the writing process. Why are we arguing about this?
I don't know.
I
I'm
just-
so confused
I
as to
was,
what James
no,
is getting
I
at
was
here.
just because the
Joe-
story for Young
Joe-
Frankenstein's came from
Yeah.
Gene Wilder.
Put your hat on so we can both hit James with our hats.
My hair is looking good.
Sure. Okay. Anyway, solid movie. So
yes,
it is Mel Brooks's. It's Mel Brooks's. I consider it Mel Brooks's trilogy. It's he had a huge hit with Blazing Saddles. He followed that up with now I'm going to make a movie that's in black and white. That was a huge hit, all in the same year. And then he went to the studio and goes, "Oh, by the way, my next film completely silent." That was followed up with Silent Movie.
you should tell him this when you meet him.
I've heard him tell the story 100 times.
That it was his trilogy.
No, I call it his trilogy just because it was
okay.
like boom, boom, boom.
I just like High Anxiety because of stories about getting Hitchcock's approval.
I just love High Anxiety too, but even though it's not his anyway. But
It's a flawed movie, yeah.
it's very flawed. But Silent Movie, it's just him trying to make a silent movie. And it's him trying to gather all these famous actors to be in his film, with him and his sidekicks Danny DeVito and Marty Freeman. Not Danny DeVito.
Some people call him Dom DeLuise.
Dom DeLuise, yeah.
And Marty Freeman.
I'm
You been watching the Fargo?
Oh my God! For those who are not on, who are just listening to us audio wise, I put my hat on backwards to make my brain work again.
Does that work?
No.
Marty Friedman, by the way, did give us the soundtrack for Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Well, that's what. If he did nothing else on top of curing cancer, he is a mensch. Chad.
Marty Friedman gave us Almost Honest for the Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And in Universal Soldier The Return gave us Crush 'Em, the song. And in Mr. 3000, Chad's favorite movie, he gave us the song Meltdown. So I'm glad you mentioned Marty Friedman.
Oh my God, I did say Marty Freeman, didn't I?
Yeah, that's why I started.
You said Freeman.
I looked up Marty Friedman because I'm like, there has to be somebody.
Unfortunately, that was still closer than Danny DeVito.
Marty Feldman.
And the other interesting part of this is that I think even if we hadn't seen Silent Movie, we hadn't saw Silent Movie, we would both, James and I, have known who you were talking about, even though you said Danny DeVito, I still would have known you were talking about Dom DeLuise.
Yeah, but why did the fact that I caught myself saying Danny DeVito and I didn't catch myself saying Marty Freeman?
I don't know, but I was like, there's got to be somebody that's made movies named Marty Friedman. So that's why I was like, let me immediately look that up so I can make a joke.
And I was wondering what James was talking about. I'm like, why is James saying Marty Feldman in Mortal Kombat?
Nope, that's why, because you didn't say Marty Feldman, sir. You said Marty Friedman.
Oh my God. But no,
Now,
I love
you
the
go.
fact I love Silent. God, I'm gonna have to get out of this real quick. So I just love Silent Movie. It's honestly, I just really genuinely love this film. It's got some of the greatest segments ever in a Mel Brooks film. I love the fact that they all attack Burt Reynolds in a shower, where they're soaping him up, and of
Uh-huh.
course you don't hear the scream. You just see Burt Reynolds all sudsed up, losing his mind, and then there's the silent wheelchair race with Paul Newman, and then it has one of the best sight gags to me in film history. And now keep in mind, this is my personal opinion. I know nobody else shares this, but when their film reel gets completely unwound and it's Marty Feldman winding himself up into the film reel, I
It's been a
genuinely
while since I've seen it.
I watch it. I think it's Silent Movie, Ghostbusters, Ed Wood, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I watch once a year.
Yeah.
Young Frankenstein. I watch that once a year too.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein. I watch it with my kids every Halloween.
Um, and now that Haley's really now that my youngest daughter's really into it, I I do watch it because she'll sit down and watch it with me, and it makes me so happy. It's one of those ones where literally a tear will come out of my eye because she will just sit down and just stare at the screen in awe of Young Frankenstein. Now she won't watch the original Frankenstein, but she'll watch that. But yeah, no, I had to talk about I had to talk Young Frankenstein. I had to talk about Silent Movie. Joe, save me from this.
All right. So what we're going to do is get off the Germans for a second. And I do actually appreciate Chad actually
I,
bringing. I didn't. It never occurred to me to do silent movie, and it's actually different.
it was my first pick when James said, let's do silent movies.
I mean, it makes sense that would be your first. It should came to everybody's mind, but it just never occurred to me. I was
It's
trying
the
to
one movie
find.
poster that I can't believe I don't own.
I actually do own it. Hmm. Interesting.
There's four movie posters that I can't believe I don't own. That's one of them.
So when I was trying to pick, and before this, we did a segment for Good Movie Monday. There was several of my picks were horror films, and I was like, I can't do this one, can't do this one. And then I was trying to pick something that isn't as well known, and it's something I only discovered in the last 7 or 8 years. And Lord, it's long, but some of the imagery and it's told in chapters. Have either one of you ever seen the Swedish film Haxan? H
No, I've
A
never seen
X
it.
A N about the witch. It's
About
about
the
witches
witch.
and witchcraft. It's about witchcraft through the ages, and it's many, many chapters. And it is so well made, so creepy. I encourage you if you're in the horror. I know it's a long set through now because it's a silent film, and I think this movie I need to look up. It's told in 7 parts. So it was released in the US only actually in 1968. Wouldn't make it here till 1968. A lot of people really didn't because it actually showed witchcraft. And what I mean by that is, hold on, Chad's brain has slipped into mine. Proper ways to
Oh
actually do
God, it's terrible. I apologize.
proper ways to do witchcraft. It's written and directed by Benjamin Christman, consisting partly of documentary-style Torah storytelling as well as dramatized narrative sequences. The film purports to chart the historical roots and superstitions surrounding witchcraft, beginning in the Middle Ages all the way through the 20th century. It's based partly on Christian's own study of the, and I can't say this back to the Malus Maleficarum, a 15th century German guide, once again, fucking Germans, for inquisitors. Hexen is a Swedish film, and it came out in 1920-21, and it's just such a odd looking movie. The film makes use of so many special effects techniques in its depiction of the occult, including puppetry, stop motion. It has demons that are portrayed by actors wearing special effects makeup, superimposition. So, for example, if you've ever seen The Exorcist, where it superimposes over her face of the Reagan with the demon Pazuzu, that wasn't new. That had been already been used 50, 60 years beforehand. Witches flying over, out of body experiences in her sleep, reverse motion. It's one sequence that makes coins appear to fly from a table into air. It's an interesting movie that it's one of those things where I wanted to bring finally something that I didn't know about till the last, once again, maybe 10 years ago, but I think it was 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh, by the way, yeah, I know Haxan. It's actually on my queue in Tubi to watch because
Right.
I was amazed by it. Yeah.
It's really pretty. It is tough to watch, not because it's poorly made. It's just the narrative style in 7 chapters and being so long because it's not, it kind of bounces all over the place. But it's such an interesting movie. And I wanted to pick something that maybe not everyone would know because I mean, Metropolis and the Kid, everybody gonna know, but I thought we needed to talk about this. But instead of doing the cabinet of, we talked about something earlier, I wanted to mention Haxan. All
You
right.
know,
I think James is last. Go ahead.
it got edited and re-released. When it did get released in the US, it was edited,
Yeah.
and the original release version was released under the title Witchcraft Through the Ages. Do you know who narrated it?
Who?
Because it was narrated. It wasn't released silently originally in the US. Some upstart named William S. Burroughs
That'd be
did the
cool.
narration.
I was hoping you were going to tell me Vincent Price narrated.
I just
Oh,
want to
no.
point out, I happened to look it up on IMDb, and it's showing clips from the movie, and there's literally a scene where witches are licking the devil's butthole.
I
I'm
think
not
you.
making this up.
I think
Now,
you actually.
it
Hold on. I
was
think.
it
Did you
released in
put?
the
Hold
United
on.
States for a
Hold
long
on.
time?
Hold on. I'm gonna make a joke here. Chad, you only put. You didn't put 3 of those X's in a row, did you? That's a different Haxan.
Yeah, it's
That's
an interesting picture that I encourage you, if you're into horror and imagery, go seek it out. Chad said it's on Tubi. Check it out.
Yeah, it's on
It's
Tubi.
it's a sit through. I'm told you it's non-linear. Well, it's linear in the sense, but it's not one long story. It's a bunch of stuff put together, but it's a very interesting movie. James, bring us home, James.
well, that movie Haxan stars
And
someone
if you don't
called
want to, real quick, if you don't want to deal with commercials, if you have Max, it's on Max.
Max. I was gonna say I've seen it on Max. That's where I saw it. Um, Haxan stars a very talented actress called Astrid Holm, Holm. Astrid Holm, I bring up not by accident because she also appears in the film I'm going to talk about. I have not talked about a horror film per se. I'm going to now because
Look in
it's
the mirror.
no, this is a
Joe.
horror show. This is a horror show, not a film.
Harsh.
Film has class, sir. This ain't got none.
Harsh. You
Um,
have
We're
all kinds
all
of classes. You
What is
make
the? Oh my God! What's the Marilyn Manson song? We're all stars now.
dope show.
Dope show. Yeah, this is the dope show.
um,
It
so
dopey.
Oh
Astrid
yeah.
Astrid Holm.
That you look like you're doing a bad Jim Carrey.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah. Would you let him go so we could
No,
all go
no,
to
Yeah,
bed
I want to go to
eventually?
bed.
No, Astrid Holm is in Haxan. The year before that, that came out in 1922. In 1921, Astrid Holm was in a film that some people argue is superior to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari as a horror film. That film is what I'm going to be talking about because I just happened to get it on Criterion Edition, but I'd seen it before. And that's why I got on Criterion because I don't know if you all have seen this, and I haven't said the title yet, so you're not going to be able to answer. But it is the Criterion Edition was done because it is a special effects laden film, silent film that still holds up. And so a little bit about the film. It is called, so Astrid Holm is in both of these supernaturally tinged films.
Yes. Are you
hold on.
going to tell us what it is?
No, not until I finish my build up, sir. And you interrupted. Now I have to start over. No. She was the Winona Ryder of her time. So
Why couldn't Winona Ryder be the Winona Ryder of her time?
because she wasn't around in the silent film era, unless she's a vampire, in which case I'll write that movie right now. An actress that through the ages has to take on different roles, because she's immortal. Anyway, the work was originally released in Sweden, where it was made, as Korkarlen, which means the Wagoner. You kids love the Wagoner.
I prefer.
I like the Wagoner trainer.
I
In
prefer the Rifleman.
in America, we called it The Phantom Carriage. So it's based on the novel
That's what I call what's in my pants.
I'm sure you do. Thy
Because he
Soul
had an
Shall Bear
accident.
Witness. Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness was the novel it was based on. But it was released under many titles, depending on where they were, because they had to figure out if they were going to try to treat it as a religious film, because it uses a lot of religious imagery, or if they were going to own it as a horror film. So in England, it was released as The Stroke of Midnight, Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness in other places, and all that, because it does play as a horror movie. It plays as a ghost story. It plays as a religious parable. The plot to the film is that a town drunk is someone is dying that works for a religious organization, the Red Cross, for lack of a better term, and their last thing is, "Please go get this man. I want to talk to him before I die." And they find him. He's the town drunk, and he says, "I won't go. I won't go." But they interrupt him while he's telling the story about his friend George, who died the year before on New Year's Eve. And the mythology goes that if you're the last person to die before the end of the year, you have to drive the wagon that picks up the souls of the dead for the next year as your punishment. The last bad person to die has to drive that cart. Push comes to shove, it's the last day of the year. Spoiler, it ends up that this guy dies. He then is picked up by the person, and of course, the guy driving it is his friend George, who was the last person to die the year before, and he tells him all the sins that he did. So it uses flashback, it uses a lot of stuff. Astrid Holm plays Edith, who works. By the way, that's EDIT. It's actually Edith, who is the Red Cross person that's asked to see him. And then you get flashbacks of her about how she kept trying to save people, and it ends up causing actually sometimes harm. The reason this is a really important film, if you love horror, is because it had major impact. It was directed by Victor Schulstrom, who was a Swedish director. He also plays David Holm, who's the drunkard in the story. And this was one of the favorite films. Matter of fact, he said he watches it at least once a year of this later upstart, Ingmar Bergman. But more important than that, to many people that will be listening to this podcast, if I'm assuming, maybe you're not huge Bergman fans, but you may have seen a certain film called The Shining. And there's a very famous scene where there's an axe and a door involved. If you watch The Phantom Carriage, that's taken from there. It's not a shot for shot, but it's dangerously close, about an angry husband in a state of perhaps possession coming through a door with an axe, using the axe to get through the door. So The Phantom Carriage is a silent film, but it did so many special effects using double exposures, layering a faded cell over a normal cell so they look ghostly as they walk around. That was a major thing that the film does, and when you see it, it still holds up. Aspects of the Amityville horror pull from this film, the way the movie was made. But I also have to say, the reason I saw it for the first time, I was a kid and I didn't know the title of it. I rediscovered it because I was like, what movie was that? Because my aunt, when I was young, would always be like, oh, we're going to watch this movie. And she would always remember my parents. And one of the movies that we watched was Darby O'Gill and the Little People. But she said, before you watch this, you should watch this one that really informs how this was made. And my aunt always tried to do the artistic stuff and the classic stuff. And she showed us this silent film, and I didn't remember the title of it. But if you've seen Darby O'Gill and the Little People, the Banshee, and then the carriage that comes through the sky to claim the dead, she said, oh, watch this. It actually sets that up. And it was a silent film, and I didn't remember what it was called. It's this. So if you're a big fan of Darby O'Gill and the Little People, you definitely need to watch The Phantom Carriage. It's a phenomenally interesting film that, yeah, you could play it as a religious parable, but there's some truly creepy scenes in this thing. And so I saw this Criterion edition a couple days ago, and I got it, by the way. Gentlemen, if you all haven't seen it, perhaps we should use it to kick off our Halloween movie.
I haven't seen it. I was going to say, where can I watch it?
I'll bring it
to watch it with you.
Nobody watch it yet. Oh, I'm
Did
sorry.
Joe say with such enthusiasm? I guess I have to watch it with you.
No, that's not what I said at all.
That's what. Yep.
No, he said
Yeah.
I didn't. He actually said unless I have to watch it with you. See what, which was going to be my point. Don't
It's
watch
way
it
more
yet.
insulting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. No, both of you. I love the fact that both of you went with the insult. I got this revolver off the
I
sleeve.
didn't
His
insult you.
insult was it trying to insult you through me instead of just insulting you the way he
I wasn't
wanted to.
insulting. I'm like, yeah, bring it. I'll watch it with you.
But no,
I'll-
so I
I
thought
mean, I
I've
don't
now
want to. I want to watch it, but do I have to do it with him? It's
I've
horrible.
now picked up 3 or 4 films for our annual
I'm
Halloween-a-thon.
gonna bring my favorite shirt.
Are you going to wear it?
Yeah.
Or just bring it?
No, I'm just.
not putting.
Put it on a
I'm
stick, pack it around.
I'm gonna
Um,
wear this as my pants.
But no, the Phantom Carries, like I said, it did get a Criterion release. It's another one that was found and restored. And so it's the actual restoration. This was the one, as I looked it back up, they found in a barn. They had old versions, but they found a pretty pristine one, and that's what got restored for the Criterion. And so, yes, if you've never seen the Phantom Carries, watch it. Except for you two, let's save it for when I bring it to our Halloween shenanigans.
All right, we've been about an hour and a half, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. What are some of your honorable mentions? I really don't have any other than Caligari.
I have 2, but Chad, go ahead.
Okay, it's just my top 3. When you talk about silent movies, you have to talk about Buster Keaton. So I want to bring up real quickly The General.
Yep.
It's probably his best film of all time. James, you brought up Harold Lloyd, but when you talk about Harold Lloyd, you do have to talk about Safety Last.
It's classic scene.
It's his most iconic film, but also too when you look at the stunts he did in that film, and you realize he did it with only basically one hand. Because for those who aren't familiar with Harold Lloyd, I honestly think in a lot of ways he should exceed Chaplin in a lot of ways for his film work. But Harold Lloyd was horribly disfigured in a publicity accident where he was supposed to be holding a fake bomb, and somebody gave him a real one, and it went off.
Yep.
And completely blew off a huge chunk of his hand and mangled his face. And he still went on to make some of the best films of his career with only half of a hand.
And by the way, even before that, so when he did The Freshman, he was doing his own stunts.
Yeah, he always did his own stunts. Yeah.
And when they needed extras to play college football players, all they did was go to USC and say, "Give us your biggest linebackers because we need this to be funnier."
Yeah.
And they legitimately told he legitimately told them, "Run directly at me and tackle me like you would in an actual game."
Yeah.
He was not a big man.
Yeah, and Harold Lloyd, he should be right up there with Chaplin nowadays. And then finally, I got it, Joe. I want to briefly mention Charlie Chaplin, because Charlie Chaplin, again, my favorite film of Charlie Chaplin's is The Gold Rush, where he's stuck in a cabin with 2 other individuals starving. It still has one of my favorite scenes of all time, where he's just trying to cook and eat a raw shoe.
Mm-hmm.
I love that scene, and where he's trying to fight with a bone with a dog. Iconic scenes for me. Go. Those are my honorable mentions.
James?
I've got 2 I want to mention that I think are key ones. One, I'm just going to say quickly, The Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney Sr. is a fascinating one, largely because the end is such a great trick. He pulls his hand back like he's got something in it, but it's nothing. It's just people are disgusted by him, so they assume he's going to do something evil. That I had to mention that. Excuse me. And I've got the hiccups now. The other one I wanted to mention, which is my Reputation, but you can watch this one in 4 minutes, and it's still worth your time because it's fascinating. Visually, it doesn't make any sense, but it's fascinating visually. So, I mentioned Trip to the Moon, but before he made that, George Chad, what's his name? George.
Mew.
In 1898, he made what other people argue, well, that's sort of science fiction. It's really not. It's allegorical on a good day. Otherwise, it's just random scenes strung together that involve an astronomer. But it's called The Astronomer's Dream. You can watch it. Matter of fact, if you literally go to Wikipedia and search The Astronomer's Dream, it will have in the corner, you can watch this movie. It's about 3-4 minutes long. But the entire thing is an astronomer falls asleep or you don't know he's asleep at the beginning, but he is asleep. And Satan appears and taunts him. And then a caped hero woman shows up and drives Satan away. But then the astronomer is actually attacked by the moon. The moon comes down and he's fighting the moon. He's trying to hit the moon with stuff to get it to go back up in the sky. And he eats him and then spits out noticeable chunks of his body, like a torso comes out. And then Satan reappears to claim victory. And then the hero woman comes back, banishes Satan, and reassembles him. And then the astronomer wakes up and realizes it was all just a dream. It is really weird. But watching it, what it made me immediately think of is, man, I wonder what it would have been like if George Malou would have worked with Walt Disney. Because the moon in this is straight up the clock face from It's a Small World. It is straight up, like you could see that parallel pretty quickly. And so it's a fascinating thing to watch, to think in 1898, this man with no real technology building a practical puppet prop that basically just went back and forth and the mouth opened. And then, it eats the astronomer. It does all this stuff. It really gives credit to, we do talk about Walt Disney as kind of this genius, and then later the marketing machine took over and made it even more. George Malou and a bunch of these people, Murnau, all these people, I wanted to close with this one as my honorable mention, because what these people did with, to borrow a line from Star Trek, bear skins and stone knives compared to what we have now, and you can still watch it and it gives you a response. Like, I know all that stupid props. I know it's all, but I can watch that and be like, oh, yeah, it still means something. You can interpret it differently. It's cool. Is why we still should talk about silent films. And that's what I've got.
And with that, we appreciate it. We hope you've enjoyed this. This has been Bonehead Weekly.
And we'll be silent until next time.
Uh-huh.